I'm 42 years old and I thought I knew my wife of 18 years. We met in college when we were both 24 and she got pregnant at 26. It was not planned, but we were excited. Sarah always wanted kids and I was ready to step up. The first few months of her pregnancy were normal. We went to doctor appointments, looked at baby gear, and told our families. My parents were thrilled, and Sarah's family seemed happy too, though I could sense her sister Jenny was struggling. Jenny and her husband Mark had been trying to get pregnant for years with no success, and she always seemed a little jealous. At around 6 months, Sarah began acting strange. She suddenly wanted to attend doctor appointments alone, saying the waiting rooms were full of germs. She also spent more time at Jenny's house, supposedly helping with renovations. By 7 months, Sarah came home saying she had complications, that the doctor suspected pre-eclampsia and she might need bed rest. She cried and seemed terrified. I offered to come to the next appointment, but she insisted Jenny would take her instead. 2 weeks later, Jenny called me in a panic. Sarah had gone into premature labor at Jenny's house and they had rushed to the hospital. By the time I arrived, Sarah was exhausted and devastated. A doctor I had never met said the baby did not survive due to umbilical cord complications and preeclampsia. Sarah had also lost a lot of blood. I was destroyed. We both grieved for months, holding each other, crying over what our baby might have looked like and the life we had lost. We went to counseling and slowly tried to rebuild. Sarah bounced back faster than I did. Within 6 months, she wanted to try again, while I could barely think about it. We tried for years but never succeeded. Fertility tests and treatments showed no problems, yet Sarah never got pregnant again. She took it hard, often saying maybe losing our first baby had damaged her. Adoption came up, but Sarah resisted, saying she wasn't sure she could love a child that was not biologically ours. 6 months after our loss, Jenny and Mark adopted a baby boy, Connor. He was healthy and beautiful. Sarah adored him and babysat constantly. Connor loved her too. People joked that he liked Sarah more than Jenny, though Jenny never found that funny. Over the years, I noticed things I should have questioned. Connor looked like me. Same dark hair, green eyes, and even the family dimple. People often commented on how much he resembled Sarah's side. Connor also shared my childhood interests, especially astronomy and tinkering with mechanical things. My parents pointed out how much he reminded them of me at his age. Sarah was deeply involved in Connor's life. She gave opinions on his schooling, extracurriculars, even his medical appointments. I assumed she was being a devoted aunt who never had kids of her own. Then Jenny got sick. She was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at 52. Mark became her caregiver, but Sarah helped raise Connor, who was 13 then. She picked him up from school, handled his homework, and took him to activities. Again, I thought she was simply supporting her sister. Jenny passed away 3 weeks ago. At the funeral gathering, I overheard Mark telling his brother that he was not sure he could raise Connor alone. Then he said something that stopped me cold. He admitted he had never really felt Connor was his son, that Sarah had always been more like a mother to him, and maybe it was time Connor lived with people who could give him more. I asked what he meant, and he quietly told me the truth. Connor was Sarah's biological child. When Sarah got pregnant, she had agreed to give the baby to Jenny and Mark, who could not conceive. They worked out the arrangement privately, and the story of losing the baby was created to hide the truth from me. Mark confirmed that I was Connor's father, but said Sarah had made Jenny promise never to tell me. Jenny had wanted to confess as her illness worsened. But Sarah insisted it would be cruel after so many years. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. My son, alive for 16 years, had been right in front of me, yet I had been made to believe he died. I thought about all the times I was proud of him, taught him things and watched him grow, never knowing he was my child. That night I confronted Sarah. At first, she denied it. But when I told her what Mark said, she broke down. She admitted it was true. When she got pregnant, she panicked. She thought she was not ready to be a mother, but knew Jenny desperately wanted a child. Jenny suggested the plan, and Sarah agreed. They arranged the adoption with a different doctor and hospital. Sarah said she convinced herself it was best for everyone. I asked how she could lie to me for 16 years. She claimed she always meant to tell me, but as Connor bonded with Jenny and Mark, it felt cruel to disrupt his life. She believed I was happy not knowing, since I still got to be part of Connor's life as his uncle. She said she thought I was experiencing fatherhood in a way that spared me the stress of raising him. She also admitted she only told me now because Jenny's death forced her hand and Connor needed more support. That was the breaking point. I had wanted to be a father back then. I grieved for a child I thought I lost. To hear her talk as if she did me a favor was unbearable. I left and have been staying with my brother for the past few days. I cannot stop thinking about the years I lost. I missed Connor's first steps, first day of school, teaching him to drive. I was present for some things as his uncle, but not as his father. Now it's too late to get those years back. I also think about Connor and what this will do to him. He just lost the only mother he has ever known. Now he's supposed to learn his life was built on a lie, that his aunt is his mother and I'm his father, that Jenny and Sarah conspired to keep this from him. How is a 16-year-old supposed to process that? Mark has been calling me, saying Connor deserves the truth. He said Connor has already asked why he does not resemble either parent and has wondered about his biological family since Jenny became sick. Mark believes it's better he finds out now than later. But I do not know if I'm ready. How do I suddenly become a father to a teenager? How do I explain why he was given away and why I was never told? What if he hates me for not knowing? What if he resents Sarah? What if he's angry at everyone? And then there's my marriage. How do I forgive Sarah for deceiving me for 16 years about something this huge? How do I trust her again? She watched me cry, grieve, and ache for a child I thought was gone, while she knew the truth all along. She let me suffer while Connor grew up 20 minutes away. Yet part of me wonders if they truly believed they were doing the right thing. Jenny got to be a mother. Connor had a stable upbringing. Sarah avoided motherhood, which she was not ready for. From their perspective, maybe it seemed like the best solution, but from mine, it feels like the most selfish betrayal I have ever experienced. Now I feel torn between anger at Sarah and grief for the years I lost, and the pull I feel towards Connor. He needs stability and Mark is struggling. Sarah cannot be the answer given the circumstances. I am left with the question, do I step up now as his father? Or would that only cause more damage to a boy who has already suffered so much loss? I don't know the right answer. I do know how to build a relationship with a son who has been in my life but never as my child. I do not know if this is something I can forgive my wife for, or if this betrayal ends our marriage. What I do know is that my world has been turned upside down and I cannot stop asking myself one question. How do I tell my son the truth without destroying him? Update 1. I want to thank everyone who responded to my last post. I've been reading all the comments and trying to take in the different perspectives. Hearing from people who have been through similar situations has helped me feel less alone. On Monday morning, I met with a lawyer. Many people had asked about the legal side of things, and I needed to know where I stood. The lawyer explained that since Mark and Jenny legally adopted Connor, they are his parents on paper. Even though I am his biological father, I would need to establish paternity and go through court if I wanted custody or visitation. She said that given Connor's age, the court would likely want to hear his preferences, not just those of the adults. The lawyer also told me that Connor could choose to stay with Mark, live with me, or there could be a shared arrangement. But before any of that, Connor had to know the truth because he is old enough for his opinion to matter. She recommended we get into family counseling before talking to him, so we would have professional guidance. I also talked to my brother, who has been letting me stay with him. He reminded me that Connor needs stability more than anything right now. He said that no matter how angry I am at Sarah, Connor has to come first. He is a kid who just lost his mom and is already scared about what will happen to him. So I decided to go home, talk to Sarah, not to forgive her, but to figure out how we were going to handle this for Connor. When I got home Tuesday evening, Sarah was a wreck. She had not been sleeping or eating, and she kept apologizing. She admitted she had ruined everything and did not expect forgiveness. But she was terrified of what this would do to Connor. We talked for hours. She told me more about how this started. When she got pregnant, she was excited but overwhelmed. We were young, unmarried, and still figuring out our lives. When Jenny found out, she begged Sarah to consider letting her adopt the baby. Sarah promised to pay medical expenses and take care of Sarah during the pregnancy. Sarah said that at the time it seemed logical. She loved me, but she doubted we were ready for parenthood. Jenny and Mark were older, financially stable, and wanted a child desperately. Sarah convinced herself Connor would have a better life with them. The idea of faking the miscarriage was Jenny's. She feared that if I knew the baby existed, I would want to be involved, which could complicate the adoption and confuse Connor. Sarah went along with it, believing it would be easier for everyone, including me, if I thought the baby had died. Over the years, Sarah often thought about telling me the truth, especially when we struggled with infertility, and I grieved not being able to have children. But by then, Connor was so bonded with Jenny and Mark that Sarah feared revealing the truth would destroy his sense of security. When I asked what she thought we should do now, she said we needed to tell Connor together, with Mark. She explained that Connor had been struggling since Jenny's death and had been asking questions about his biological parents. Mark had told him he did not have much information, which was not a lie, but not the full truth either. We called Mark to discuss things. He sounded exhausted. He admitted Connor had been asking more questions about his adoption and that he was struggling to help while dealing with his own grief. Mark said he was beginning to realize he might not be the best person to raise a teenager alone. He told us he had always known this day would come. In some ways, he was relieved the secret was ending. He said Connor deserved to know the truth and to have a relationship with me. Mark said he would always love Connor and wanted to remain part of his life, but he recognized that I might be better equipped to give Connor what he needed. We agreed to sit down with Connor this weekend and tell him everything. Sarah found a family therapist who specializes in adoption and family secrets, and we set an appointment for Friday. The therapist said we should expect Connor to feel a mix of emotions, from anger and confusion to sadness or even relief. She told us to reassure him that all of the adults in his life would continue to support him. I'm terrified of this conversation, but I know it has to happen. Connor deserves to know who he is and where he comes from. He deserves to know that his biological parents did not abandon him, even though the circumstances were complicated. I also realize that I need to know him as my son, not just my nephew. I have been thinking a lot about the comments people made. Many said Connor might actually feel relief to finally understand why he always felt different, why he does not look like Mark and Jenny, and why he has always had such a strong bond with Sarah and me. I hope that's true, but I am also preparing for him to be angry about being lied to for so long. As for my marriage with Sarah, I have no idea what the future holds. Right now, my focus is on Connor and making sure he gets through this. Sarah and I will have a lot of work to do if there's any chance of rebuilding trust, but that has to wait until we handle this immediate crisis. I will update again after we talk to Connor, and once he knows the truth, we can begin to figure out what our family will look like going forward. Update 2. The conversation with Connor did not go the way I expected. We met with the family therapist on Friday. She helped us plan how to explain everything. She encouraged us to be honest but reassuring, and to let Connor ask questions and react however he needed. Saturday morning, Mark brought Connor over to our house and we sat down in the living room. Connor sensed something was serious. He kept glancing at us and asking if everything was okay. Sarah began by telling him we had something important to share about his family and his history. We explained the truth. Sarah was his biological mother. I was his biological father, and Jenny and Mark had adopted him when he was born. We told him that we had kept this secret his whole life. Connor listened quietly, his face showing confusion, hurt, and anger, but also a kind of relief. After a long silence, Connor asked if this meant Mark was not his real dad. Mark was wonderful, telling him he would always be his real dad in every way that mattered, but now Connor had the chance to know his biological father too. Connor asked if Sarah was not really his aunt. Sarah explained that she was both his aunt and his biological mother, and confusing but true. Then Connor asked the hardest question. He wanted to know if we gave him away because we did not want him. I told him that was never the case, that we were young and thought Jenny and Mark could give him a better life. I told him I had grieved for him for 16 years, believing he was gone, and that finding out he was alive was the best news of my life. He asked why we had lied for so long. We admitted the secret began as protection, but grew into something complicated. We apologized and told him we understood if he was angry. His reaction surprised me. He started to cry and said he had always felt like something was missing, that something about his life never made sense. He had wondered why he looked so different from Mark and Jenny, and why he felt closer to Sarah and me than to some of his other relatives. In a strange way, the truth made things finally click for him. Then Connor revealed something unexpected. He said he had been having dreams about Jenny, like she was trying to tell him something. While cleaning her things, he had found a letter she wrote to him. He left the room and returned with an envelope that had his name written in Jenny's handwriting. Inside was a 3-page letter explaining everything from his biological parentage to the adoption, how deeply everyone loved him. It was dated about 6 months ago, when Jenny's Alzheimer's was worsening, but she still had clear moments. In the letter, Jenny said she had always planned to tell him the truth when he turned 18. But her illness was moving too quickly and she feared she would forget or not be able to explain. She wrote about her love for him, about Mark's love, and about how Sarah and I also loved him. She said the adoption was made out of love and a desire to give him the best life possible. The most painful part of the letter was her regrets. She admitted she had felt guilty about keeping the secret, especially as Connor grew older and asked more questions. She wrote that she had wanted to tell him for years, but that Sarah had convinced her it would be too disruptive. She apologized for keeping the truth from him and hoped he would forgive all of us. But the letter also contained instructions. Jenny told Connor that after her death, he should have a choice about where he wanted to live and who he wanted as his guardian. She wrote that Mark would always be his dad, but she worried he might struggle raising a teenager alone while grieving. She wrote that she thought Connor might be happier with me. She had seen how naturally we connected, even when he believed I was just his uncle. She believed I could give him the guidance he needed as he grew into adulthood. After reading parts of the letter aloud, Connor told us he wanted to live with me. He said he loved Mark and would always see him as his dad, but he wanted to know his biological father. He said he did not blame anyone because he could see we had all tried to do what we thought was best. Mark was incredible. He told Connor he supported whatever choice he made and that Connor would always have a home with him if he changed his mind. He said Connor's happiness was what mattered most, and if being with me felt right, then that should happen. The therapist told us that Connor's reaction was not unusual. Many kids who learn late about their adoption feel relieved when things finally make sense. His desire to connect with me was normal and healthy. She advised us to take it slowly, letting Connor spend time at our house over the coming weeks before making permanent decisions. That night, Connor stayed with us. It felt strange but wonderful. We stayed up late talking about his interests, his future, and what it was like to grow up believing Mark and Jenny were his biological parents. He told me that he had always felt something unique about our relationship, but now he knew the truth. It was like a puzzle piece fitting into place. Sarah and Connor also talked. He told her he was not angry that she gave him to Jenny and Mark, because he understood she was young and thought she was doing what was best. But he said he was hurt that she had let him believe his father was dead. Sarah apologized and promised never to lie to him again. As for Sarah and me, we are still trying to figure things out. We are starting couples counseling next week. I do not know if our marriage can survive this, but I am willing to try for Connor's sake. He needs stability, and regardless of what happens, Sarah and I must learn to co-parent effectively. What has surprised me the most is how natural it feels to have Connor as my son instead of my nephew. It feels like something missing in my life has finally been restored. Connor said the same, that for the first time he feels like he knows where he belongs. There are still details to work out, like custody arrangements, long-term living situations, but for now, Connor is safe, loved, and finally knows the truth. And after 16 years, I finally get to be a father to my son. Update 3. I wasn't planning to post another update so soon, but something happened yesterday that I need to get off my chest. Connor has been staying with us for a week and things have gone better than I expected. We've been getting to know each other in a new way and it feels like he belongs here. He's been in the guest room, but yesterday he asked about turning our home office into his own bedroom. That small question made it clear he is thinking about staying long term. Sarah has been working hard to rebuild trust with him. She carries a lot of guilt, but she's putting his needs first, which matters more than anything. They've had long conversations, and while he's still hurt, he's starting to understand why she made the choices she did. Yesterday in the garage, Connor found a box of baby things from when Sarah was pregnant. Inside was a baby book with ultrasound pictures, notes we had written, and even a list of names. His name was on that list, and it hit me hard to see it after 16 years. Connor asked if he could keep the book. and then began asking what it had been like when Sarah was pregnant, and what life might have looked like if we had raised him ourselves. Answering those questions was painful, but I told him about how excited I was to be a father and how much it crushed me when I thought he died. Then he asked if I thought life would have been better if I had raised him from the start. I told him I could not change the past, but I believed we would have figured it out and been happy. I reminded him that Mark and Jenny loved him and gave him a good life, but I admitted that I regret missing his childhood. That was when Connor told me he had been struggling with identity. He said he does not know which parts of himself come from us and which come from being raised by Mark and Jenny. He's been questioning who he really is. I told him that both biology and upbringing shape him, but I could see how much he was wrestling with belonging. Later he asked me something that caught me off guard. He wants to legally change his last name from Mitchell to Thompson. He said he wanted his name to reflect his biological father and help him feel like part of our family. I told him we needed to talk to Mark first. So we went to Mark's house. I was nervous, but Mark once again showed how gracious he is. He told Connor he supported whatever he wanted to do and that he would always consider him his son. He even said Jenny would be happy to see Connor connecting with his biological family. Mark asked that Connor still see him as family, and Connor immediately promised that that would never change. He said he felt lucky to have two dads who loved him. We spent the afternoon there, helping Mark go through Jenny's belongings. Connor found more letters from her, including one for his 16th birthday. She wrote about how proud she was of him and how she hoped he would one day understand the choices made for him out of love. It was emotional, but also healing. On the legal side, I have filed for guardianship of Connor. Since Mark supports it and Connor is old enough to express his wishes, my lawyer says it should be smooth. The name change will be separate, but Connor is determined. Sarah and I are going to counseling. Some days I think we can rebuild trust, and other days it feels like the foundation is gone. Regardless of what happens, we're committed to co-parenting. Connor is also in therapy and handling things well for someone his age. He spends weekends with Mark and their bond is evolving in a new but strong way. What has amazed me most is how natural it feels to have Connor as my son. All those little things I noticed about him over the years now make sense. But beyond that, there is a connection between us that feels right, as if this is how it was always meant to be. Last night we built a model airplane together while talking about college. He said he was thinking about engineering, like me. Then he looked up and said, "Dad, I'm glad things worked out the way they did. I got to have Jenny when I needed her, and now I get to have you." It was the first time he called me Dad without hesitation, and I teared up. This whole journey has been painful, but moments like that make it worth it. I've been reflecting a lot on forgiveness. I'm still angry at Sarah for lying to me for 16 years, but I see that holding on to that anger helps no one. Her choices were not malicious, even if they were wrong. I'm also learning to forgive myself for not knowing, for trusting others, and for grieving without asking more questions. Connor is 16 now, and he is an incredible kid. Kind, intelligent, funny, mature, and thoughtful. Whether those qualities come from genetics or upbringing, they are part of who he is, and I am proud to be his father. Looking back, this could have played out in countless painful ways. If Jenny had not gotten sick, Connor might never have learned the truth. If she had not written those letters, he might have struggled more. If Mark had not been so understanding, this could have become a bitter custody fight. If Connor had been less mature, he might have turned to anger instead of acceptance. But that is not what happened. Instead, I got my son back after 16 years. Connor got answers. Mark got to see Connor secure and happy while maintaining their bond. Sarah no longer carries the burden of secrecy. It's not a perfect ending. My marriage may not survive. Connor still faces difficult questions about identity. Mark must rebuild his life after losing Jenny. Sarah has to live with her choices and work on trust. But it is a real ending with people trying to love each other despite mistakes and impossible decisions. Now Connor Thompson has filed his paperwork and is doing homework at the kitchen table. Sarah is making dinner and humming, something I haven't heard in years. Mark will be over this weekend to help Connor with a college essay. And I'm sitting here grateful for second chances and for a son who now calls me dad as if it has always been that way. I do not know what our family will look like in a year, but I know Connor and I will figure it out together. And that feels like enough for now. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.